folks, Jen or Murgriffin here, and we're going to look at the extension kits for the Odysseus from Imio in Greece, which lets you put it in big mode, which holds almost 7 mils of juice, clear window. Lets you put a 510 in the windowed mode, and lets you put it in dripping mode. We're going to build each one of those in turn. Let's take a look at all the steps and see what happens. So the Odie extension package is like getting a Christmas present. There's multiple extra long mouthpieces, there's extension rings, there's frosted plastic windows, much like the piece from the UFS, only frosty. See your juice. And there's another long mouthpiece of a different shape. There's another whole mouth tanky bit. There's a separate base. That must be dripping mode. The unboxing. And there's this one. I'm not sure what that's for yet. We'll get to there. Probably the CE2, I would bet. And, you know, because it's a GG, it comes with O-rings. Lots and lots of O-rings, little nuts and bits and bobs that we'll figure out eventually. I am a little disturbed by this teeny tiny little metal ring that I still haven't figured out what it's for, and I've done everything but CE2 mode, and frankly, who cares about that? So, let's go take them apart. Alright, first things first, let's take it from short mode that it came with when you purchased it without the extension set, and put it into big mode, which is a 6.5 mil tank. I'm going to take off the top cap here. This was just washed, so that's just a little bit of water. I'm going to take off the top tank here. Then I can take off this juice control mouthpiece. And we are left with the rebuildable coil, the grounding nut that holds it in place, the base, and then the positive connector. Now, to put it into big mode, we need to use this bigger mouthpiece, because it's going to be taller. And these separate pieces here. We're going to start with this metal extension ring. Now, it's going to go on the bottom. We're going to tighten that down. Make a nice seal against the O-ring. There's the coil. That one's a 2 ohm coil. And I'm going to be very, very careful with the plastic window here, because it would be very easy to cross thread and ruin those threads on the window. You'll know when it's going in smooth. I don't try to force it any other way. And again, make a nice tight seal against the O-ring. Now the next piece is what was the tank, the whole tank, and it's the top piece for the short mode. That goes right on the top. Again, make a nice seal with the O-rings. Now we'll grab that longer mouthpiece. It still has the cover for the juice flow control over the rebuildable atomizer. Now if you'll notice in the window, I can basically see the effect of tightening down the mouthpiece, which restricts flow of juice to the wicks around the rebuildable atomizer. And I can see what loosening the screw does. So it's nice that the window happens to be right there where you can see the effect of turning that juice flow control. All that remains is to fill it up, seal it up, and let it go. So due to the magic of film, we zip to a full tank, 6.5 mil juice, screw the top cap back down over the mouthpiece. It's a GG, it has lots of metal threads, it has O-rings. And we make sure that O-ring is down tight around the mouthpiece to make a seal. And then we screw in that top piece so that the O-ring does make a nice seal. That keeps juice from pouring back out the top. And we are ready with the Odysseus in big mode. Now let's proceed from that same point, the Odie in short mode, which is the way it originally shipped, and let's put it in dripping mode. So again, I'm going to loosen that top nut, take the top cap off, take my tank off, take off my mouthpiece juice flow control, and for this we're actually going to have to put it in a new smaller base. So I'm going to have to unscrew the rebuildable atomizer portion from that larger, wider tank base. Lots of threads, lots of O-rings. And we're going to put it into this smaller base that's just as wide as the ceramic cup and the metal hinge there. Lots of fine threads. I'm going to screw that down, and again, the center post here, or the positive post, is adjustable, so you want to make sure that you have it screwed down tight enough that the metal post making the positive connection is coming out far enough out of that bottom center ground area to make a good connection with your mod. And I always check it before I seal it up and make sure that it fires on whatever mod I think I'm going to use it on. There we go, firing. Take it off, and that means I can go ahead and feel confident locking it down. Oops, didn't need the adapter too. Alright, now I'm going to take this grounding nut off because the actual top cap and sort of quote-unquote tank for the dripping mode is actually going to provide the ground to that outside wire. So I don't need that specific grounding nut. It's too wide and it just gets in the way. So let's take it off here without taking the wire out. Make sure that wire's still in there tight, and screw the dripping mode top on. Lots and lots of very fine threads, but it does go on nicely and evenly. And with that, we have a completed dripping mode ready to put on our atomizer, our mod, and go. And the final mode we're going to look at here is the one that uses probably most parts, and that's putting it in 510 mode. In other words, taking that big tank that I had, 6.5 mil, and using it with a regular 510 atomizer. To do that, we sort of need to build a bottom base that's going to replace all the positive and negative post connections from the rebuildable atomizer. And that requires us screwing this little metal piece, which is going to be our post, positive connection post, into this plastic piece. You only have to do this the first time, just that it came unassembled. Then I'm going to put an O-ring on here to keep, the juice from going back down the post. And it's a tight little O-ring, so it's not cooperating with me. Get on there, little doggy. Go. There we go. Down in that groove. Now I'm going to put it in this piece. That side works if you're using a CE2, and I don't, because they're not my favorite. And so for 510 mode, that's going to go down onto the plastic post. And I'm being very careful here because I don't want to mess up those plastic threads inside the steel threads. I want to make sure I have it going in smooth so I'm not destroying them. That's probably the only part you need to be careful with, is putting, metal screw threads on a plastic piece. And make sure I have that tight. And my hands are not very strong. So I'm going to grab a little screwdriver and just make sure that I have that tight as far as it goes. Yep. Now the top has a gap or crenellations in it that correspond to the air holes on the atomizer. And that's important because the juice is going to go through those openings into the air holes on your atomizer, so I try to line them up. Now, that is going to replace the entire rebuildable atomizer part and screw into the tank base, providing the, extending the connection of the 510 atomizer all the way down through the base. Now I know that most of my mods need that center post to be sticking up a little bit, and this is adjustable, so the more you screw it down, the more that post is going to come out. So I'm just going to stick it on my standard silver bullet here, which is seems to be the pickiest of my connectors, and make sure that it fires. Yep. Firing glow. That's just a standard Cisco 1.5 ohm atomizer. Now we start building the tank, just as we did for large mode on the rebuildable atomizer itself. I need to go dig out that grounding nut, rebuildable atomizer, to put down on here to keep it from screwing any further and pushing that positive post out. That'll keep that in place as it was. Now we start putting the tank together just like we did for big mode. Whoop, not that piece. This one. Well, okay. First stage on this is there needs to be a seal around the top of the atomizer so things don't go out the mouthpiece. So he has us put a little O-ring on here, and you only have to do this the first time. To keep that O-ring flat, that O-ring is going to be pushed up in there by this little nut, and then tightening it is going to cause the seal around the outside of the atomizer. So you got to use your little finger, tighten that up far inside the mouthpiece. Again, you only need to do this the first time. And he said tight, but not too tight, so that when you push it over the 510 atomizer, you should feel a little resistance as it makes a seal. There we go. Perfect. There's a little resistance there. Now it screws down, and as you can see, tightening or loosening that mouthpiece, just as with the rebuildable atomizer, opens juice to go into those gaps on the screw so that they can get to the air holes on the atomizer. So loosening that makes a bigger area for juice to get through. Tightening it makes less and less juice flow. So in effect, it sort of works like a big UFS, except the UFS doesn't hold 7 mil juice. However, as we put this together the same way we did the other mode, bottom extender on first, then the glass window, then the tank top, I've found that juice control is touchier than the UFS. In other words, on the UFS, I feel I have a more fine control over how much juice is getting in and out, and it's a little more forgiving. This one really isn't very forgiving. You move it just tiny amounts, and you go very quickly from flooding to dratty, and you kind of got to find that tiny spot in between where the juice flow is perfect for the juice that you have in there, just flowing into the atomizer by the very suction act of, as she said, vaping on it. So that is it all together in 510 mode, and just needs filling it with juice and tightening everything down, and it will be ready to go. 510 in the Odysseus. So that's the Odie and all its different setups. I've really been enjoying the dripping mode with that 3 ohm coil I made on a variable voltage device. 510 mode, I'm probably going to break this down. It's great to have a tank. I have other tanks. I have UFSs. I really like the rebuildable coil more than the other. Now, that being said, 2 extension kits and 2 Odysseuses allow me basically to use it in like 3 different modes at once. There are 2 other modes. One is putting the rebuildable atomizer in a UFS. I'll get to that a little later. One is instead of a 510, you can put a CE2 in here. It's just twisting that one bottom nut around the other way. I didn't see much sense in trying that because I didn't have the shorty CE2s that were needed. But it's much the same. that is a little bit of flooding. The juice control on this, although, you know, putting a 510 in here basically turns it into a UFS. That'll fit on any mod, which is kind of great. The juice control ring on this is very nice, or it has more play, I think is what I'm looking for. The one on here is very tight, and just moving it minute little amounts to get the right spot, a little too far and it floods like you hear. A little too tight and it gets a little dry really quick. Other than that, it works really well. As a tank, I mean, it's a standard 510 atomizer. I'm really enjoying the dripping mode. Big mode works better for me than small mode with the rebuildable inside, just because I like more juice. That being said, I mean, the Odysseus is not for everyone. The extension kit is not going to be for everyone. I kind of enjoy it. I think it's a fun toy. It's fun to rebuild atomizers if we're ever cut off from manufacturers. You know, I'm good for the zombie apocalypse. And they have a nice clean taste. Better than any of the China-made ones. I really like how rebuildable atomizers have that clean taste, because I know what's in the coil, and I know what the wick is, and I know how clean it is. You are my